Did you know that in the last presidential election, over 200 counties that voted for the Democrat candidate in every election since the 1980s suddenly switched over and voted for Trump by a 20-point margin? Did you know that scholars recognize this wasn't a fluke? More and more scholars are recognizing that economic nationalism has indeed triumphed throughout the world. We're going to take a look at one of those arguments and discover how we really are seeing nothing less than the emergence of a new nationalist populist economic order throughout the world. You're going to absolutely love it. Greetings, everyone. A very happy Tuesday to each and every one of you. If this is your first time here, we post 2 videos a day analyzing current events in the light of super awesome conservative trends, so that you can live in the present light of even better things to come. So you know what you do. If you haven't already done so, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We're at 250,000 subscribers. So exciting. I can't thank each and every one of you enough. And it'll be a privilege to have you as a regular part of this channel, where each and every day we celebrate together the inevitable collapse of globalism, the unstoppable rise of a new conservative age. Before we get into that rise of a new global order based on economic nationalism, make sure to download your free gift, which we put together just for you. We're calling it our Fake News Antidote. It's a compilation about 20 different news sites that I go to each and every day for my information. And you can download it completely free at the link down below in the pinned comment section. I think you're really going to enjoy it as a resource for yourself. And finally, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video. And that's, of course, our very good friends over at Noble Gold. They've been with us for a while now. And obviously, we're living in very volatile times. And the whole coronavirus situation, the volatility that's clearly affecting the stock market. So really the question is, where will you be when your finances, with your finances when this is all over? Will you be better off than you are today or worse? Now, the specialists over at Noble Gold want to protect your assets with a safety net made up of the trustworthiness and reliability of precious metals like gold and silver. So I'm sure you know gold and silver are low-risk assets, and the best part is you can cash out whenever the danger has passed. So talk to one of the specialists over at Noble Gold today and see how they can help protect you and your family for what's coming. Click on the link below to get your free gold guide, or just simply give them a call at 877-646-5347, or you could just check them out at noblegoldinvestments.com. All right, so let's dive right in here. David Goodhart, who's the head of the demography unit at the think tank Policy Exchange, he has a very good piece that was just published by unheard.com. I'll link it down below for you for your reference. But the title of the piece says it all. Farewell free trade and good riddance. And the gist of the piece is that the spread of the coronavirus sealed the deal, as it were, when it comes to the death of globalism and the rise of economic nationalism. Now, of course, we've been arguing that for some time now on this channel, that the virus has done more to further nationalist populist sentiments and policies than all the political and economic forces combined. Interestingly enough, and you know, Goodhart does a good job of teasing that out, the effect of the virus in turning the world decisively towards a nationalist populist direction for the foreseeable future. He begins by noting 2 horrific consequences of globalism brought out for all of us to see by this virus. First and foremost, we no longer need rats and fleas to spread disease. Now we can do it quite well ourselves through open borders, mass international travel, and supply chains. And then secondly, when things do go wrong, we find that we're no longer self-sufficient to deal with the problem, since we've outsourced our manufacturing industries to nations in the global south like China, who are deliberately, by the way, threatening the global north with the possibility of holding back on sanitation masks and vaccines and medicines that they alone produce. In other words, the coronavirus pandemic is the perfect metaphor for the perils of the hyper-connection so characteristic of globalization. And so as a result, Goodhart is seeing what were once orthodox free traders or free marketeers converting over to economic nationalism. I saw this myself with Marco Rubio, you know, the senator from Florida. I don't know if you're aware, but Marco Rubio, apparently he's gone through a massive economic transformation. So back in 2016, during the nomination process, he was he was almost as bad as Ben Sass in Nebraska. You'd always say, in this economy, we can no longer, and then fill in the blank, right? Those manufacturing jobs are never coming back to this economy. He was a globalist par excellence, right? This is the fundamental logic of the free traders, who see globalization as absolutely non-negotiable and unstoppable. And then they'll turn around and celebrate, or they'll talk about how the most important thing for us is freedom and liberty. Well, which is it, dude? Am I free, or is globalism inevitable? Is globalism something I have no freedom over, right? That's the absurdity of the free trade fundamentalists. Our freedoms are radically altered and subservient to a globalist economy. The freedom of having nation, culture, custom, and tradition protected and revered and cherished is suddenly eroded in the face of all that. So, fascinatingly, now Marco Rubio has been taking a thoroughly economic nationalist position of late. But as this article points out, that's just par for the course of what's been going on now for really the last several years. So, for example, he points out that last year world trade actually fell by 0.4%. And this was before the coronavirus, keep in mind, okay? And this dropping of world trade was in tandem with President Trump's efforts at bringing back the United States supply chain away from China, which thank God he did. So can you imagine how much worse we would be if we continued down the path of a single global platform centered on Beijing? And interestingly, Goodhart notes in the article that even the concerns over climate change have dealt their own blow to unfettered free trade by placing a premium on localism and reducing travel, as well as promoting a kind of self-sufficiency. Regardless of the reasons, the fact that you have so many differentials pushing the global economy towards an economic nationalist direction really throws into relief precisely how diverse economic nationalism is, or at least can be. So we've talked about this on a number of other videos, but it bears repeating. Basically, economic nationalism is, in contrast to globalism, economic nationalism is extremely diverse. What's so interesting here is that economic nationalism does not necessitate tariffs. You don't have to have tariffs or taxes or protectionism, on foreign goods to enact an economic nationalism. I think this is perhaps the most misunderstood element of economic nationalism, in that economic nationalism is often associated merely with protectionism and the imposition of tariffs on foreign imports. As scholars have pointed out, however, the problem with this equivocation of economic nationalism as mere protectionism is that there's no nation or nationalism in this equivocation. Said differently, critics often wrongly leave out the nationalist dimension when they reduce economic nationalism to protectionism. And what they're getting at here is that someone who reduces economic nationalism to protectionism is actually reducing economic nationalism to statism, right? The state is not necessarily a nationalist activity. There are very important differences between, say, statism and nationalism. Statism, by its nature, involves institutional activity, while nationalism involves trans-institutional phenomena, such as culture, community, custom, language, religion, ethnicity. Statism is institutional, while nationalism is trans-institutional. And so the important point here is that while economic nationalism may involve protectionism, it can't be reduced to protectionism. Instead, as the name implies, scholars see economic nationalism as an economic approach that is intentionally pursued for the benefit of culture, custom, and tradition that collectively comprise the nation, right? Economic nationalism is a facet of national identity, where certain kinds of cultures, traditions, religions, ethnicities, they forge distinctive economic policies in accordance with specific national traits. And what this means is that economic nationalism could certainly involve protective measures, as we've seen with President Trump. But as we've also seen with President Trump, it If your nation contributes positively to, say, the national security of our nation and the like, well, then we'll be happy to have free trade with you. No problem. This has been part of Trump's ongoing negotiations with Mexico. If you secure your border, Mexico, we're going to have a great trade relationship. If you continue to cost us money and because we have to deal with all these migrants passing through, then we're going to have you pay for it with tariffs. So economic nationalism can involve protectionism, but it can also involve free trade measures. It can involve subsidies. It can involve controlled markets, free markets. Indeed, economic nationalism can actually be all of the above. It can be very libertarian in some national contexts. It can be highly regulatory in others. The important point here is that the purpose of the economy is for the protection and perpetuation of a nation's culture, customs, and traditions, not the other way around. The economy is not seen as sovereign in an economic nationalist view. The economy is not some scientifically rationalist system that's superimposed on nations and cultures, which in turn ends up belittling and relativizing their customs, religions, and traditions. In a globalist sense, the economy becomes the new god, and the GDP becomes the new religion. Instead, with economic nationalism, the economy here is rightly seen as an extension of national and cultural identity and is there to protect and perpetuate such a national and cultural identity. Okay, and that's precisely, I think, what we're seeing emerge more and more throughout the world. So this article here points out that the unlikely bedfellows of right-wing populism, environmental activism, along with actual technology, they're all coming together and pointing in the same direction. We all need to be far more deliberate and reliant on domestic production. We all need to be a bit more self-sufficient, and we need to defer more to things like teleconferencing with people in other countries rather than relying on mass travel. All indicators of a very real retreat and reprieve from the hyper-globalization of recent decades. It's a fascinating article, and again, I'll link it down below for your reference. But really, the big takeaway from all of this is that economic nationalism appears to have really triumphed throughout the world, and it's been a combination of a multiple of factors and dynamics that are all combining together to push us precisely in such an economic nationalist direction. Very, very interesting stuff indeed. All right, before you go, you'll definitely want to check out the video I just put up on the latest Biden meltdown. It's hilarious. He actually challenges a voter to a fight. It's absolutely unbelievable, and it's going to absolutely make your day. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.